Alright, I think we're back now. Sorry about that, guys. My computer just like freaked out and then just like froze up. I don't know what that was all about. Sorry about that. I was just testing something real quick too. Before I got back, I was like trying to test something real quick before I like went back from being on break and I just freaked out. I don't know. So great. But yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull up. Someone was trying to pull up too. I was gonna pull up a video here. Just trying to get my reference back up. Basically, I had to like restart my computer. It was really weird. There's a video I was gonna put on, and I don't remember what video it was. It kept recommending it to me, so I was like, "Oh, I'll play this on stream." And I can't find it. Is it this one? Actually, now I think, okay, I did find it. However, now I'm thinking about it, I don't think it's a video I want to really react to. Just trying to find another video to watch now that I'm like, ugh, I don't know. I think I will react to... No, this is a shorter video. I'll go ahead and react to this video. And I'm not gonna draw while I'm not gonna draw while I react to this one. This one I kind of want to like watch. I think this will be good to watch instead of just kind of like listening. I can't find any ones really that I want to put on like where I could listen and still react. I mean, there's one, but I don't think it's one that would be good for like YouTube content. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm not gonna do that one. But let's go ahead and react to this one. It's gonna be a Sam Does Arts. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna be recording, so I'm gonna be moving forward. Just gonna be talking as if I'm doing a YouTube video here. So don't be alarmed. All right, guys, welcome in. So I am gonna be reacting to Sam Does Art. So I'm gonna be doing an actual like straight up react. I haven't done one of these in a while, but it's gonna be a I'm not gonna be drawing. I normally do like a drawn react where I draw and I react to the video that I have up playing. However, this time I feel like this is a video that probably needs a little more attention. I haven't watched it. I don't know, but that's what it seems like from what I'm kind of gathering from the title and everything. So we're just gonna do a normal reaction video here. So if you are watching this and you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. You know, scroll on the bottom there. I'll have a link to this video as well down there. Check out the sponsor link for Dubby that'll be playing at some point during the video. And yeah, let's go ahead and just get into it. This is Sam Does Arts. This is Pro Artist Saves Your Drawings with reference and consent. So I think he might be taking some not so good art, not just needs improvement. That's probably the better thing to say there. Needs improvement art and tries to fix it for you. But yeah, let's go ahead and just get into it.
Not his face shape, right? That's not Hugh Jackman, that's Hugh Hackman. And for some reason, we've also upturned his eyebrow here a little bit so he looks sad. You know, we've got Hugh Sadman. What's up, guys? Welcome. Please sit down and make yourselves comfortable. Today, Professor Sam is going to be helping you guys with your portrait drawings. So I went into our Patreon Discord and asked our beautiful patrons to send me some of their art alongside a reference. The reference is very important here because without a reference, I wouldn't know what to fix. So let's not waste any more time here and get right into it. Our first entry comes from Zorom7.
Oh, and by the way, I have a Patreon and Ko-fi as well. If you want to support me, links will be down in the description as well. So, selfless plug. Sorry.
Now, at first glance, you might say, Sam, that doesn't actually need fixing. This looks pretty much perfect just the way it is. Well, to that I say, screw you. And you'd be partially right, because this render is already fantastic, but there's just a thing or two that we can do here that will make this look even better. Let me show you guys, okay? So one of the most important measurements that I want you guys to pay attention to is where the eye line sits on the face. Now look at my face, look into my eyes, look at my eye line, okay? I want you guys to pay attention to how long the top section is above my eye line versus how long the bottom section is below my eye line. This proportion is one of the most important measurements of the human face. If you don't use it when you're drawing your portraits, that's like driving with the blindfold on. Now, if we just take a look at the reference, okay, let's measure the top of where the scalp would be and draw a line to the bottom of the chin. Now, the top is about 1/2 and the bottom is about 1/2. When I draw these lines on our drawing here, they should give me the same result, but unfortunately they do not. Look how much bigger this top half is. But this is a very easy fix. So I've pulled up the liquify tool here, and this basically allows me to just move things around without completely destroying them.
Can I say what I want to say?
She's a chameleon. Ooh, yeah. Look at that. Ooh. Anyways, but what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to use the liquify tool to bring the eyes up. So you can kind of see the difference here. Now, this is the before, but if I toggle preview, this is the after.
I don't know if he's going to say it. It seems like he's not. So I would be very careful with the liquify tool. Very careful. I've used it before, and it does make things look weird afterwards. It can look correct, but also weird. So definitely be careful. Now, what you could do, and I'm probably going to say, he's probably going to say exactly what I'm going to say. He may or may not, but I'm going to say anyways. What you could do is, if it does look weird, if things look kind of distorted, because it will, that's Liquify does, it will distort things. So if it does, don't be afraid to go back and just redo your layers. Like you could redraw it, you could redo it, just kind of like use your corrected piece or whatever, or corrected layer, or whatever have you, whatever you did for your corrected layer, just redo everything on top of that. And it is, I guess, really important in this case, because it was a proportion thing. It is really important to try and fix those more so earlier, when you get your line works, or even just your rough whatever, before you move on to painting. Whatever you do, try and get that earlier rather than later, because if you're later, then whatever you get towards the end, or even at the end, and then you realize, oh fuck, I messed up, now I gotta redo all 10, 20 of my layers, just to make this one correction of correcting where the lies. So it's always best to try and correct that prior, before you move to do this. So it's not a big deal if you do, you just do exactly what he did, and then you could even do what I do, suggest if it does look weird, just corrections. Sorry, but I will not continue.
As soon as we bring the eye line up to the halfway point, you can see it's a very small change, but the portrait suddenly looks more open and a lot more comfortable. Now, I also want to make sure that the spacing between the eyes is good. So the spacing between the eyes should be equal to about the length of one single eye. Let's make sure that's correct, and we can also change the shape of the iris just a little bit so that it looks like she's looking in the same direction. There's a little comparison of the before and the after, so the eyes have been moved a little bit closer together, and they are a little bit more even in size. Something you might have noticed about the rendering is that her skin is very yellow. I get that you're trying to make her look Asian, but she doesn't quite look this sickly, especially when you compare it to the reference. So what we can do here is we can bring up the hue and saturation sliders, get the hue a little bit lower towards the reds, and then we're going to make the color a little bit less saturated, and you can see now it matches up very well with the reference. Now, of course, colors are subjective, so if you like making your characters look all yellow for stylistic purposes, that's on you. Now I'm going to just take some time here to remove her double eyelids and preserve her Asian features. And now for one final pass with Liquify, I'm going to change the shape of her head to look more like an egg. I'm going to bring the ear up because it was way too low before, and then we'll shrink the side of the face in a little bit to match up with the reference. Now time for the moment of truth. Okay, here's a comparison of the before and the after. Now this is going to be a common theme throughout this video, which is the drawings that you've already given me were very solid basis, and the things that I've done to these drawings, they don't actually take that much time, nor do they take that much effort. So here's another great example of somebody who needs help. This is a drawing from Kiki Delivers. Now Kiki, I'm sure you deliver many things, but here unfortunately you did not deliver when it comes to the proportions. And let's talk about why. So there's a few measurements that I love to use on the human face, and I've actually made a tutorial covering.
Also, I'm laughing because what he said, not because of the you know what I mean.
This on my Patreon, but one of the few very important measurements that you got to pay attention to is the distance from the hairline to the bottom of the chin, as well as how the space in between here is divided up. Now on the reference, you can see each third is occupied by a section of the face. First third is the forehead, the second third is the brow to the bottom of the nose, and the third is from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin. You gotta pay attention to this, guys, okay? Because if you don't, look what happens. Here's the eyebrow, and here's the nose. What on earth is going on here, right?
Yeah.
This distance between the brow and the bottom of the nose is way too vast. This is like the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. You've got enough fuel to get from the nose to the eyebrow, but not enough to get back. That's for vertical spacing. Now for horizontal spacing, you'll notice that the space between the eyes should be equal to the length of one eye. But here on our drawing, it is way too long. Kiki has actually specifically said, I need a crash course in how to use Liquify. That skill does not compute. Don't worry, brother. I got you. And we're going to start big picture, okay? So we got to bring this eye back. It's off on a field trip. It's taking a vacation, but we got to bring that thing back, okay? So let's bring the inside of the eyebrow in along with that eye as well. And just for now, we're going to bring in the inner corner of each of the eyes. We're going to bring the nose and the mouth section up. One thing that you never want to do in Liquify is just take one thing and drag it too far, because then it becomes, you know, Picasso. Do small incremental changes, okay? Very small minor changes, very small brush strokes. So there's the before and after of that Liquify. We're paying attention to not only the vertical spacing, but also the horizontal spacing between the eyes. But if you'll excuse me, let me go on a bit of a rant. I'm not a big fan of this reference at all because it's so heavily edited. If you look at this, I mean, it's very monochromatic. Okay, this is all just shades of beige. There's not really much of a hue variation. So if you base a study off of this reference, chances are your drawing is going to come out looking very flat and monochromatic as well. I usually prefer to look for references that have a little bit more going on, a little bit more interesting lighting. Maybe there's some bounce light, some ambient light. Maybe there's a mixture of complementary colors instead of just one analogous color scheme. But anyways, before I get too sidetracked, there's the comparison between the before and the after, pre-proportional correction versus after proportional correction. And here's our third student submission for today by Aries. I will take all the advice and critique approximately month 3 of learning how to draw/paint. Now right off the bat, Aries, despite the fact that I'm going to make a lot of changes to your drawing, I just want to say for your 3rd month of drawing and painting, this is fantastic. Okay,
Oh, it's the 3rd month? Okay,
definitely on the right track. So what exactly is going on here? Well, number 1, the shape of the face is just a little bit off. Now I think this is Hugh Jackman, but if you look at the side of his face, you can see it's got a very chiseled shape, right? He's got the jawline. He's got these straight edges. Whereas on your version, you can see we've got a very soft and rounded outline for his face. That is not his face shape, right? That's not Hugh Jackman, that's Hugh Hackman. Something else to pay attention to, okay? Again, the spacing, right? The length of the eyes, the inside
That's weak Hackman.
equal to about the length of one eye. And for some reason, we've also upturned his eyebrow here a little bit, so he looks sad. You know, we've got Hugh Sadman. The entire shape of his jaw has got to change. Let's give him a jaw. Change the shape of the hairline a little bit to match up the reference, and let's bring the eyebrows down. Okay, let's make the inside of the eyebrows lower so it looks like he has that serious expression instead of looking sad.
So yeah, this definitely is this feels like a big like face proportion liquify and how to use liquify tool to fix it. That's what this video feels like.
Bad. Time for the eyes. So this eye is way too long. Way too long. So we're going to just bring this outer corner in, okay, and shrink the size of this eye. All right, still doesn't look like him, but this is the best we can do for now. At least he has a jawline. So the next thing that we have to pay attention to is the range of values. Usually, okay, if you're a newer artist, you tend to be a little bit scared to push contrast. But let me just show you guys, look at the value of the underside of his eyebrow. Look how dark that is, okay? And compare that to the value on his jacket. His jacket is lighter. Whereas on the drawing here, if we take this value on the underside of his eyebrow and we compare it to his jacket is much darker. Now let's change that. I'm going to use a big round brush here and just add shadow to the entire side of the face that's supposed to be in shadow. Let's not be afraid. Look how much of a difference one single brush stroke can make, okay? But we're not going to stop there. Let's add even more. Let's add more depth. Let's make the eye socket even darker. Let's add some darker shadow just underneath the nose as well as onto the side of the mouth here. And we can add even more of that to the side of the face as well as just beneath the jawline. All right.
He's a very chiseled man. And you gotta take that into consideration. He's a very chiseled face. Because he works out. Because he's Hackman.
All right, look how dark that can get. Okay, let's not be afraid to add contrast here, guys. Now, something else I'm going to add is darker values inside of the eyes. Okay, underneath the eyelids, you're going to get a lot of ambient occlusion, so that means there's going to be a lack of light there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some basic rendering with a little bit of a sharper brush. This is going to be more of a detailed brush that kind of allows me to carve out the shapes of the wrinkles on his face. I don't know if I'm going to be able to capture his likeness exactly one for one here, but we're going to try our best. So there's before adding the shadows, there's after adding some shadows. Okay, do not be afraid to add contrast. Now, something else that you don't want to hesitate with is the silhouette of the hair. Watch this. Okay, we're going to take a little sharp brush here. I'm going to add just some silhouette elements. I'm not adding any new values or any shading to his actual hair, but I'm just adding some silhouette here. Now, with this silhouette in place, look how much more that looks like hair. There's a comparison of the before and the after. We've changed the shape of his face. We've also added more contrast and darker values to the shadows on his face, so now you can see a very clear and distinct light source. And here's a great entry from Ultra Sketches 11. Now, this is already a beautiful portrait. I love the way you rendered the face here. Very nice colors. To the average person, this might look like a perfectly fine portrait, but of course, we can always make it better.
The first thing I noticed is that the painting, their painting is lighter. One eye's really big. The left, her right eye is really big, especially in comparison to the left eye. Everything else is fine. But I think the fact that the eye shape and the size and everything is kind of throwing off the proportion of the just like this area of the face, like the eye area of the face. So I think once he fixes that, it's gonna fix everything else. And also maybe bring that jawline up a little bit.
First thing I want you guys to do is take a look at the position of the mouth. Okay, look how much distance is between this corner and the side of the face versus this corner and the side of the face. Now let's look at the drawing. Okay, so there is the corner of the mouth and there's the side of the face. There's the corner of the mouth and there's the other side of the face. So there is a clear imbalance here if you're comparing the reference versus the drawing. Now, another really good way to keep track of where the mouth is supposed to be on the face is look at the center of the upper lip. Here on this reference, the dip here lines up with the center of the nose, whereas on the drawing you can see this dip does not line up with the center of the nose. So for sure the mouth is a little bit shifted towards the side, which means we're going to have to bring up the liquify tool and we're going to have to move the mouth over just a little bit. I want to center it beneath the nose and I want to bring the outer corner of the lips in just a little bit so that it sits center on the face. So you guys can see there's before and there's after liquify. Very small change, but it does make a big difference. Something else that I find a little bit jarring is the eyes and the way they're rendered. Now, usually just underneath the upper lid, you're going to see a little bit more shadow. So let's add some darkness and we can take this green color and kind of just cut back into the shape of the pupil there and just raise them up a little bit higher. That really softens the look of the eyes and it also makes it look like she's looking in a higher direction, and that's exactly what we want. If you take a look at some of the areas on this painting, maybe right here under the eyebrow, for example, or right here on the side of the face, we see a lot of repeated brush strokes with a hard round brush. And this look can be distracting in your final render. So what we can do is we can just gently blend out some of these rough edges. You never want to blend away all of your hard edges, but you do want to keep a solid balance between soft and hard. Especially here under the eyebrow, you can see having so many brush strokes doesn't actually do you any favors. In fact, it just makes that area look a little bit more distracting. So if we just soften that up, that gives you the exact same look, but now you have a balance of hard and soft edges. Now let's just add some hard edges here. Okay, let's add a hard brush stroke to the cheekbone, and then let's blend out the inside of that stroke, just like that. We can always add in some brush strokes with hard edges here just like that, but you want to be as economical as possible. If what you're trying to say can be said with one brush stroke then don't use 3 brush strokes for it. Because oftentimes if you layer too many strokes, especially with a hard round brush, it becomes noise instead of information. Now I'm going to add in some details here just for the double eyelids above the eyes. And we want to make sure to blend some of these elements out and maintain the hard edges versus the soft edges. Now let's go around the mouth and just soften the edge of the lips a little bit, because when you have a really harsh and distinct edge between the lip and the rest of the skin, it makes your drawing look more like a drawing. You know what I mean? Because even if you look at your own lips right now, you know, it's never going to be a fully hard transition. There's always going to be some blending between the pink fleshy color on the lips and the rest of the skin. The hair is another area where we could do with a little bit more
what happened?
simplification. Okay, so look at this, for example, the highlights here. It's a little bit scribbly, a little bit messy.
Yeah,
we're going to use a slightly lighter
I was thinking that too, but I was like,
for the highlights on the hair, and we're going to just paint that on. Now, this is going to look ridiculous when you first do it, but trust the process. Now, we're going to take the original hair color, and using a technique of reduction, we're going to just cut back into the streak of highlight that we've placed on the hair. And look what happens. Look at the way this all just comes together. Okay, look how that reads as a highlight on the hair. Now, once you've done this, you can then start to go in with a little bit more of a sharper brush and add some details of stranding in the hair. But you don't want to scribble this from the get-go. You want to work big and then work your way down to small. And look at that. Let's add some silhouette to the hair, and that's a beautiful portrait. But again, these are very small changes. I haven't done anything that like completely changed the entire drawing. So that means you've already got a very solid base. But if we just pay a little bit more attention to some of these smaller details, you can turn your drawing from an 8 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. So there we go, guys. There's a little class critique session. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully you can take some of these tips and start applying them to your own art. Again, most of the time you guys are already 90% of the way there, but if you just add some of these tiny changes, boom! Suddenly, you're an art god. Subscribe to my channel if you guys want to see more art-related content. Check out my Patreon for monthly tutorials where I do stuff just like this. Actually, not just like this. Even better than this. That being said, thank you so much for watching this all the way through, and I'll see you guys on the next video. I love you guys.
All right. That was Sam Does Arts. Critiquing some and correcting some art. Okay, I was wondering if there was maybe links to those artists, but then again, I think they're like beginning artists, so they probably don't have like probably don't have like Instagram stuff or anything like that. But yeah, definitely at least check out Sam Does Art for sure. Give him a sub and go ahead and give this a like. Let me post those to the chats. Yeah, so, I was gonna say something. Yeah, oh, and then also, I'll have a link, so that link I just posted, I'm gonna have posted down in the comments below. Also, while you're down there, make sure to hit subscribe, like this video, comment below, and yeah, I'll go ahead and see you in the next video. Alright, so let's go ahead and continue working. I am going to play that video, however, I'm not going to have it on YouTube. I'm not going to, like, post it to YouTube, so it'll be, like, a stream only. You guys will be able to watch it on, like, the VOD and stuff. But... Second. One second. So this is going to be Luke reacts. I will, if you guys want to watch it without me reacting to it, I'll go post that as well.
Shout out Lo-Fi Lazy, $5 super chat. The Concord stuff where a developer spoke about the game's release and troubles. They went on a podcast. YouTuber Mystic has a quick video going over what they said. I pulled up the video. Shout out Mystic, 819,000 subscribers. And they have this video going over what happened with it. Let's see what they say.
We are definitely a little bit late covering this story because it came out 3 weeks ago now at this point. I've had no time to include all of this into LTPS, but there is enough here to where it's like, we'll just talk about this separately. And it's finally getting some insight into what it was like behind the scenes at Firewalk when Concord came out and inevitably being shut down, refunded, and the game being completely removed from online stores, and what was a very big public multi-million-dollar failure.
It's crazy that it was only a year ago. It both feels like yesterday and like 5 years ago, you know, but it was September 6th, 2024 that they took the game offline. That's crazy. That's crazy. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. Yeah, it was a catastrophic disaster. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think the player count was so freaking low that it wasn't paying anywhere close to the server costs that they had, which is why they took it offline. To a certain extent, yeah, you keep the game online, you can make some money through cosmetics and stuff, but I think that it was so underperforming that it was prohibitively expensive across the board, and they didn't see a route to recovery. The other piece, and this is just funny, at launch on Steam they had a peak of like 600 players. I think it was 625, which is horrible, right? That's horrible for the launch of like a huge game that you spent hundreds of millions of dollars on. But there was also tweets by like Insomniac. Was it 697? Maybe. Okay, 697, not 625. But Insomniac, for example, and Sony Bend, they tweeted out from their official company pages, everyone at the studio is super excited to try Concord. We're all loaded up. Congrats on Firewalks launching this game. Or
Are
whatever.
we though?
So there is a strong possibility. And I've heard stories of this where studios will have everybody in the studio play the new game from the latest studio, you know, in the company's family, and they like take a day of work and all play it. There's a strong possibility that 20, 30, 40, 50% of those players were other PlayStation employees who were literally being paid to play the game, which just makes it so much funnier. You know, like it really is just amazing. When you start to think about it, like, oh, so it was already horrible. It could potentially be way worse when they were looking at, okay, filter by number of players not being paid to play this. Oh, immediately.
No.
Okay, yeah, we're shutting it down. We're shutting it down. Irish, thank you for that. 10, very generous. Split Fiction is being considered as a Game of the Year contender. I think the game is based too much on who played. It's based too much on who you played with to be considered. What are your opinions on it? I think it's phenomenal. I personally don't think it has the same magic as It Takes Two, but I really love Split Fiction. I've thought about replaying it recently, actually, because it's not that long. But I really liked it. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because it is based on who you're playing. You're going to experience a slightly different version of the game than the person that played the other character. But I don't think that that's prohibitive or causes any significant issues. I think the game is really good and certainly would deserve a nomination. But I also see what you're saying. I get you. Continuing on.
Not just in PlayStation history, but really games and entertainment history. It was such a big public failure, and so it was always going to be a really interesting thing to finally have some insight on what it was like behind the scenes on the ground at Firewalk, and we finally had that from the podcast A Life Well Wasted from Robert Ashley. They flew out to Seattle and spoke with 11 people from the team across multiple disciplines, that being engineers, producers, artists, things like that. It really runs the gamut. And so we do have a lot of quotes here to digest, which right off the bat, they don't actually say it's Concord or Firewalk or PlayStation. They're being very legally NDA compliant. There's always a conflict of interest to say anything, you know, too harshly. And that might also be part of the reason why there's still a lot of sort of skirting around things here. So there's many aspects of the game they don't directly address. But again, we still have a general sentiment on what it was like at the studio. And so,
Like, we didn't want to break NDA, so we're going to be very, very vague. When Hot Sauce Guy and Giant Yellow Trash Monster ran
I mean, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, what are you gonna do, you know?
into the room, we decided to change how they were presented to the audience. I wonder who they could be talking about. Also, while we're talking about Trash Monster, in case you missed the top of the stream, I'm in a secret Discord. I have a secret Discord account where I join servers that I don't want people to know that I'm in. Nothing bad. It's stuff like this. I'm in a Discord server for Concord fans, hardcore Concord fans, because I find it interesting how they still, even a year after the game is dead, they still are talking about it. And I found one
I
of
know,
them
right? It's like, what's there
had
to talk
drawn
about?
some very, very nice fan art that is horrifying, and I don't know what to do with it. So I'm going to share it with you, so you also share.
Oh no. Please no. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I have a bad feeling about this.
Share my trauma. They posted this.
Okay.
Why don't you show me why you go by he, him? She says to the gigantic trash can monster. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to
But, was there more? No. No.
do with that. Just, yeah. Sigh. Yeah, exactly.
Lasai.
I don't know what to do with that. I literally have no words. So I'm just going to share that with you, and we're going to move on. And if I ever find them posting any other funny memes and videos and pictures and stuff, I'll share them with you. They are still going hard, dude. They still like have modded versions of the game so they can play it. Like, it's pretty impressive, honestly. But yeah, anyway, I'll share
That is
more of
pretty
that if I find
impressive.
some. But now that's in your head forever. So you're welcome.
Thanks. Thanks. Thanks.
right off the bat, I want to mention that when people initially did join the team, and we heard about this before we got this podcast, but there was indeed some sentiment going on that, hey, this thing we're building is too big to fail. One person said, and I quote here, "Every creative endeavor is a gamble, but from when I first came in 4 years ago, it was like it's too big to fail. There's so much behind this. Even if things go poorly on launch, it's going to be okay, and we'll have a year runway, 2-year runway to kind of right the ship."
And this mentality of too big to fail, I think, is how Sony approached it just in general, where they're like, we've spent so much money on it. It's like a $200 million product. There's no way a $200 million product doesn't do gangbusters. I don't know. And I think that there's been that approach with a lot of big companies.
Well, they did
with
it.
like Saints Row reboot, for example, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, same thing. It's like, this is an accomplished studio, and we've spent ridiculous amounts of money on it. How could it possibly fail? And then we see that it doesn't matter.
How could
much
it
we spent on
fail?
it. If players don't like it, they don't like it.
I don't know. How could it fail?
I had all suspicions of this will not be something I'll play, and I don't think a lot of people I know will be into it, but I think I was going into it with, yeah, it's too big to fail, and so I had confidence that we would at least stay afloat.
That's really sad to be like, I think it'll float. It won't sink. It won't move, but it'll pretty much like sustain itself. That's kind of sad. It's also, I mean, this is something that's allegedly working on the game that doesn't really think that they're going to play it, doesn't think their friends will play it. And like, that's sad. That's sad. One thing I'll give Todd is that Todd has said many times that when he's working on games, their primary focus is to try and build a game that they would want to play, that they would be fans of. And if they find it fun, they're like, our audience should find it fun too. I don't know if they just downed like a fistful of Adderall every time they played Starfield and that's how they had fun with it. But somehow, you know, they missed the mark on that one. But I think
funny.
that's kind of sad to think that they're spending years working on a game that they don't even like.
Yeah.
That's just kind of sad.
Now, one
is.
person with concerns said, quote, "When I first joined, I asked some very hard-hitting questions of like, what are we doing differently than these other situations that are on the market?" And
How dare you? Shut up. Stop being negative. Support us. It's funny. I think they just swapped out the word game from for situation.
And I didn't get an answer that I was expecting or satisfied with. So I kind of, from moment one, had a bit of, okay, they'll have to prove it to me. It didn't really happen. Now, getting into the teaser trailer, the reveal trailer, and then ultimately the beta,
and it's amazing that they didn't have an answer for that, because like you would think that that's the most obvious question. What are you going to do that separates you out? It's a similar question as what I asked some of the designers on Marathon. I was like, what did I say? I was like, oh, they said we want to make a revolutionary extraction shooter. So when we went to lunch, I asked one of them and I said,
did they though? Did they?
What is revolutionary about this? Like, what's the revolutionary component? And they said the ranked system, which wasn't built yet. They had some ideas on a whiteboard, like a literal whiteboard we saw. And they said that the 4th map, which is on the Marathon ship, was revolutionary as well. But that's not coming.
The idea that is on a whiteboard over there, that's revolutionary. It's not in the game, but it's over there. We're coming, we're cooking, guys. We're cooking.
Till after launch. And that's only for endgame players. And I was like,
yeah. What the fuck? That's why we're done.
What do you
mean?
What do you mean? It seems like there should be a little bit more to it. And it seems like a similar thing happened here, where it's like, what's revolutionary about Concord? And they're like, we're working on it. It's like, you'd think that they'd have an idea at the start that made them start working on it. But instead, it seems like they started searching for something else, you know, trying to figure it out. They were a solution in search of a problem.
And I quote here, I was ecstatic. People were cheering. Only we knew what it was, because the trailer didn't show anything. It just showed kind of our aesthetic, and that's it. So we were excited locally in the studio, but the public had no idea what it was at first. I thought...
Yeah, do you remember...
Because I remember.
Do you remember that initial trailer about, like, with the hamburger? That's what they're referring to there, okay? So that Concord reveal trailer was the very, very first one. The teaser trailer. It's this one with like the hamburger on the side. And so people saw it and thought, oh, and it was later revealed that this is actually a brand new studio working on a brand new IP, and it's probably a live service game or something. But people saw this and thought, oh, this looks very Guardians of the Galaxy coded. So people got excited. They're like, oh, maybe it's like Destiny, but with Guardians of the Galaxy cast and better writing and stuff. Like, oh, that could be interesting. That could be really, really interesting. And I mean, you would never guess from this trailer that what they're talking about is like an Overwatch clone, but that's what it was. It's really, really baffling. But that's what he's saying when like the studio was really excited after that reveal. And I think that the reveal looked good. It just didn't communicate anything about the game, which is part of the problem.
I thought people were just harsh during the reveal trailer. I was like, you know, it's the gaming community. They're not exactly known for being a hyper-positive crowd. There's things we need to work on, but it's okay. Once people touch the game, it's going to change things. And then the beta numbers dropped, and numbers were not what we were expecting. And I think our mindset started shifting to things could go really bad. Speaking more on the beta, someone said, and I quote,
yeah, I think
it made news for how poorly it did, the beta. Like, people would go out to news sites to, like, hear about our game and how negatively it was doing instead of, like, hearing what the game was about. People heard about our game because of how poorly it did, but people didn't hear about what the game was or even really tried. There was no shortage of news articles and YouTube videos and hate on the internet about how poor the numbers were, so it was pretty apparent.
Yes. Well, this is why I've always said it's super crucial that you capture the narrative as soon as you possibly can. Because once your thing is defined, it's very difficult to undefine it and then redefine it. Which is similar to like Marathon's troubles. Is the moment that your game is defined as that game that stole all the art, it's hard to shake that. The moment your game is defined as the game with the really boring gameplay, like with a Starfield, it's hard to shake that. Once your game is determined and deemed as like, oh, it's the game with like the unbelievably cringy dialogue, like with Forspoken or Saints Row Reboot or Duskborn, it's very hard to shake that. Even if there's other stuff going on in the game that is genuinely interesting. Like Forspoken had some genuinely cool combat. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because now all anybody can think about is the negative. So it's super crucial to get it defined on your terms as soon as you can. And that's just something, all of these games that are catastrophic failures, you'll notice a pattern that they did not define themselves early on enough in a way that was positive. And I think part of it can be that, like, the way that they handle the marketing is very presumptive, and they assume that the audience will like it and go along with it, and then they're shocked when they don't, because they just kind of assumed or felt entitled to the fan connection. Or they were overly coy, or sometimes, you know, there is no escape because it's just fundamentally something players don't want. You know, somebody asked, like, was there any way that they could have made Concord successful? And I genuinely don't think so, because I just think at the end of the day, it was a game nobody asked for, that nobody really wanted, so it was never going to do that well. If it came out 10 years before, it probably would have popped off. But as a product, it didn't make sense. On the flip side, I think that there was potentially a way that they could have reframed maybe Forspoken, where it could have done better. Because I think, like, if you could get past the cringy dialogue and get to the gameplay, you could have a good time with it. It was just the dialogue went viral. Like, unedited dialogue went viral because of how bad it was. You know, it was dreadful. It was dreadful.
Someone else said, and I quote, "I mean, it's certainly unpleasant. It was incredibly frustrating that we didn't do any counter-programming, you know, that started immediately after the reveal of the game, and that it was just total radio silence. So a lot of these false narratives around the game got built, and it was outside of our control."
I wonder what they would consider false narratives about the game. I mean, maybe they're referring to, like, the accusations of, like, Sweet Baby involvement and stuff like that. And to this day, some people fundamentally misunderstand this. Concord did not fail because they had bad character designs contracted through Sweet Baby Inc. or whatever. It failed because it was a game nobody wanted, and it was really, really poorly marketed, and it was defined as a failure from the start. So Concord was not even really a video game to people. It was that thing that did terribly, you know, and so it turned into something other than a game. Like, it was almost like a lol cow in and of itself that people just gawked at, you know. And I agree with this developer that the radio silence on Sony's part and the developer's part was a mistake. I think that was a mistake. They should have been more communicative. And to be clear, like, I think that Hot Sauce Guy and the weird dialogue and attempt to make it seem like a narrative game, even though it wasn't, I don't think that helped. But I think at the core, 95% of the reason why Concord failed was just at the end of the day because it was a game nobody wanted. And you can even hear that in some of these interviews where they're like, yeah, it didn't seem like a game I would play or that my friends would play, but we were hoping that it would float. Like, hopefully it doesn't sink. It's good enough to stay afloat.
Now, going into launch,
yeah, it's a piece of the puzzle. Everything's a piece of the puzzle. It's all a matter of degrees, right, Bird Nerd? Like, there's cringy dialogue in some of these games. It's a component.
That was good.
A bad
it's good enough.
It's a component. With, like, Saints Row reboot, it was really buggy and poorly put together, and the gameplay kind of sucked and was super outdated, and it also had terrible dialogue and all that. And figuring out what is responsible for what percentage of its failure is of course, maybe it's a fool's errand and it just doesn't matter. But I think that it was pretty clear that in the case of, like, Saints Row reboot, for example, the writing was a huge component. Same with Forspoken. It was a huge component because that's what went viral. And you can usually tell what was the biggest component based on what the legacy of the game is and what people talk about with it in passing. And in general, with Concord, the discussion tends to be that it was a game nobody was interested in, that they spent allegedly $400 million on. And everybody's like, how did they spend that much money on it when it was never going to be successful? It came 10 years too late. I'm sure in some internet circles, the discussion's all about, you know, more cultural issues, but I think it's pretty clear that the budget and overspending on the delusional idea that this was going to become the next Star Wars level success, was a huge component of it. Which, again, that all comes from Colin Moriarty, who said that his sources were saying that Herman Holst was saying that Concord was going to be a Star Wars level success. It was going to be their version of Star Wars, the next big thing. And that is on a whole other level of delusion.
I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this here, which I kind of have to do. It's an hour-long podcast, and I don't want to sort of take all the value out of the show. I actually sincerely recommend listening to the entire thing, because there's, of course, a lot of context missing. You know, oftentimes when they're saying these things, they're joking around and just kind of laughing about the whole thing. They're, you know, generally, I think the hindsight there is that they're still pretty okay with how everything played out, and they get what happened, basically. So not to be too monotone with all the quotes here, but as far as the launch goes, right? So The game comes out day one. We saw that matchmaking, the game was basically dead. They acknowledged that. They're trying to get into one part of the game, and they can't even find people. It wasn't a technical problem. There was just nobody playing. They admitted that every stream on Twitch was sponsored, and when that sponsored stream would stop, their numbers would drop even more. So there was that, and then going offline, of course, it was definitely PlayStation's call. Not entirely surprising there either, given that it's a big multi-million-dollar public company. They're always going to get final say as the publisher, so we do know for a fact that basically nobody on the ground floor was a part of the conversation. They didn't know what was going to happen, and they were all surprised that it got to that point of the game being completely removed and taken offline. Now, getting into more of the reception side of things, here's the quotes we can share. So one of them say, and I quote here, "The most frustrating part about it to me was people had made up their mind about the game, and I felt like it was based off of, I mean, this more our fault than theirs, but we did a bad job of communicating what we were trying to do. It's just weird that there is this audience who's just constantly wanting to be excited that something fails, but the reality behind it is we're just looking at our keyboards, and then we're like, oh, no job today." There's like...
I think also Concord was a victim of broader market narratives and trends. And I've said this before, but I think that Concord, part of the reason it failed was not just what it was, but what it represented. In the same vein as what Suicide Squad ran into and other games like Duskborn and those, where it wasn't purely just on a mechanical level. Oh, well, the shooting mechanic and the dodge and the characters are not super balanced. Like, that was never really the point. The point was, this was Sony once more spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a game that nobody really wanted, certainly not their hardcore fans. And even in how they handled its failure, it was representative of everything wrong with Jim Ryan's era of PlayStation, where he's like, okay, well, just pack it up, shut it down, fire all of them, and we'll try again next time. And that's just a really toxic way of running.
It really
game
is. I don't know
and
why.
Trying to create interesting experiences for people. It's just really, really a toxic way of doing it. And that's why people, I think, you know,
That's
maybe
okay, we're
reveled or
rich.
even at times celebrated the failure of Concord, because it was like, yeah, finally, Jim Ryan,
We'll try again.
We didn't want this. For that budget, you could have released another Last of Us 2. You could have released another God of War. You could have released, like, you could have done the Bloodborne remake 5 times over with how much money you allegedly spent on this. Are you kidding me? Like, and then you have the gall to talk about, yeah, we need to raise console prices because of extenuating business circumstances. And it's like, bro, you're the one hemorrhaging money on stupid stuff. It's like, you're the one spending $3 billion or almost $4 billion on Bungie, and then you're shocked it doesn't produce anything. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? So I think that's a component of it. There certainly are people that just like to see the world burn. It's why I've stressed that I don't like the doom and gloom approach. Some people are like, well, the game industry is flopping. The game industry is collapsing. We need another market crash and all this. I'm like, you're rooting for the collapse of your industry that you allegedly like and care about and that you call like your hobby. That seems weird. And also, there's not really any clear indication of that. Like, yeah, games are more expensive, but guess what? They're more expensive because people keep buying them. Like, they keep spending money, dude. It's crazy. Spending is continuing to grow. So, and I mean, I think there are also some, they call them like gaming tourists, where they come into the industry for like culture war reasons, and they're not really gamers. They don't really care that much. They're just coming in because they want to rage about Sweet Baby Inc. or whatever it may be. And those people, yeah, I don't think they're arguing in good faith, but I think it's important to not dismiss what actual gamers were saying about Concord, which is that it wasn't a game anybody wanted, and so they were kind of happy when it failed because it was something that would probably piss off Herman and Jim, because they wanted them to get back to doing what they actually wanted them to do. They wanted them to get back making those games that define the PS4 era, you know?
This schadenfreude of, oh, big game fails, and like, that's awesome. We got to see something crash and burn. And like, that's kind of great. That's really cool. And to be a part of that process, it's really easy to bandwagon on that. Like, well, we're punching up, and not really taking into consideration that, like, well, you're punching up to that, but then all these people that work really hard on it are not those people.
Yeah, and translation, because there's a lot of likes in there. Basically, what I think they're trying to say is, I understand the desire to fight the big guys, the guys up top that are making the big decisions, and you want to screw those guys and punch up to Jim Ryan. But in the process of doing that, we are caught in the crosshairs, and the Crossfire, and we end up losing our jobs as a result when we were just trying to make the best game we could. We didn't choose to make this kind of game. It's more the leadership, but we're the ones that suffer. And I agree, that sucks. It sucks that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was abysmal and dreadful, and the founders of the studio and the guys responsible for it left the studio a matter of months before the first big reveal and launch. And I think it was before the launch, but anyway, they left right before the launch and got out without any sort of repercussions. They founded a new studio within Warner Brothers, and we're all good. Like, that sucks. I agree that the people responsible suffered no consequences, but it's just how it is, you know? Like, I don't know what's the argument? Like, I agree it sucks, but what's the alternative? That we all just go and throw money at this game we hate or that we don't like, because we want to not let you suffer the consequences of the actions of the higher up? Like, I don't know what the alternative is. I agree it sucks, but there's not really a solution.
Now, there's also one very simple quote here from somebody else that's perhaps...
How come the game's devs don't get hate? They made the game. I think the key is that there's differing levels of responsibility for something like this, okay? So when we see, like, the concept of Concord, I think, is what was fundamentally flawed. Like, it's a hero shooter with nothing really that interesting to offer. There's a couple of little bitty things where, like, oh yeah, some of your deployables will stay from round to round. Okay, that's, I guess, interesting. We're gonna have a new cutscene every week to progress the in-game story. Okay, but like, it's not that consequential. Those big overarching decisions, like creating a hero shooter like this, that's from the studio heads, that's from the people that started all of this, that sold it to PlayStation and everything. And those people are the ones who don't ultimately suffer. The people on the ground floor, the people that are like programming, doing like basic gameplay design and testing network code and stuff like that, they're going to work just like you and me. I have a fake job, but they're going to work just like you. You know, they're going and they check into the office, they do their work, they go home to their families and move on. You know, the hope is that they're passionate about what they're making, but ultimately, like, they're just trying to pay their bills. It's not like they're trying to make something bad. They're doing the best with what they can do, and it's not really their choice. On the other end, there are examples where I think the devs are much more broadly responsible, but typically with most games, there is one that fail on a catastrophic level. There's one major issue, like we discussed earlier. Maybe the writing is terrible. Maybe it's super buggy, and so QA can be blamed, or maybe it's other problems within, you know, on the technical side, or maybe it's that it's just the art direction's terrible and it looks super ugly. It could be any number of things, but usually there's one major fatal flaw with any game that flops. And it does suck that you can have a game like, say, Suicide Squad, where the game director, I think, fundamentally was responsible, because it was also a game that just never should have been made, but it also restarted, had tons of secondary mechanics that never got implemented fully into the full campaign, because they were little ideas that they worked on for 6 months and then scrapped later and then brought back in. But like, motion capture was phenomenal. I will say that till the day I die. Like, the cinematics presentation in Suicide Squad, tremendous. Very well executed, industry leading, especially for a live service game. But all those people were affected by its failure, even though the specific thing that was going on was not anything they did. They did a great job with what they were doing, but the other department screwed it up, you know. But that's just how this works when you're in a company working, and then one guy or one, you know, department screws up. But anyway, continuing. Sorry.
Perhaps the most accurate and honest about the whole thing. They say, quote, "It taught me something important, that there's something worse than making a bad game. It's making an uncool one." And I think that was the big thing.
1000% agree. 1000% agree. The gaming industry, especially the live service side of it, is super sensitive to peer pressure. There is nothing worse than being the one friend in the friend group who wants everybody to play the uncool game. You will get mocked and ridiculed. I still make fun of my brother Ben for how many hundreds of hours he put into Battlefield 2042. Every day I make fun of him for it. I will never let him live it down. And honestly, like, because it's also a social game where you're getting in parties of like 5 or 6 for Concord, you kind of need your friends to play with you if you want this to become your game that you put hundreds or even thousands of hours into. And if it's uncool, or they don't want to do it because they're more interested in Marvel Rivals or Overwatch, whatever it is, you're just never really going to convert. And if your friend group of 5 people 4 of them want to stay playing Rivals or Overwatch, and you're the only one wanting to check out Concord, you're probably going to roll over and go just play Overwatch or Rivals. Like, it's just, that's why live service games like this that are team-based are so much harder to find success with than some of these other games, because you're not just trying to convert and win over a single player who's like playing Warzone solos or something. You're trying to win over a whole friend group, and that is way more difficult.
So when Robert heard that, they asked what was uncool. They responded with, and I quote, "The audience our publisher was catering to did not want this game at all from the get-go. The game was labeled as uncool, and so everyone who talked about it was like, yeah, but this game's uncool. Yeah, but you haven't looked into it. You haven't played it. Even my family was like, oh yeah, I've heard about this game. I've heard it wasn't cool." And I was like, bro, you're not even going to play it, please.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people dismissed it out of hand because it was uncool, sure. And and I think this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Bird Nerd, like with the character designs, the art direction and stuff, and the writing and dialogue and everything there can immediately give somebody the ick and make it also not just uncool, but kind of, it evokes the same emotion as disgust. You know, it's that same cringe face that people get when they listen to some of the dialogue in a Dustborn or in a like really bad Saints Row reboot scene, where you're just like, it's disgust. It's the same face people make when they see roadkill on the road or when they see rotting meat on the table. For some reason, it's on the table. It's that same face. Where it's just,
some reason it's on the table.
And people don't want to spend time in something that disgusts them.
Yeah.
Shocker. Okay, it's why character designs are crucial, are important, and it's why writing is important, because that feeling of cringe is activating the same part of your brain that makes you feel disgust. It's why your face does the same thing. And that's hard to undo. It really is.
And they're laughing and joking here, so I want to add that context. Again, it's not all monotone. They're still very lighthearted about the whole thing, but that is definitely one of the more still very lighthearted about the whole thing, but that
okay. No, for a second I thought I saw one of my usernames on here, because I played Concord when it was out. It's the best afternoon of my life.
What?
We even did it on stream where I played it with you guys, and for a second I thought I saw one of my usernames on here, but no. I was like, how funny would it be if I was in this gameplay? But no, it's not me.
Definitely one of the more candid parts of the conversation. Now, getting into the aftermath, right? So the studio getting shut down and everything like that. One person said, quote, "One of the things that a lot of people wonder in the comment section is, what are they thinking? How do these devs not know how the game is being received? We know full well. We know what's happening. We agree with it half the time, and more often than not, it's changing the game. It's just not possible given the circumstances, given the stakes, and sunk cost into these things. It was the most beautiful car that we crashed."
And that is one thing to remember whenever you're talking about this stuff, is that developers watch videos and streams and stuff. It's why I like when
they're human. They're just doing their thing.
People get really worked up and are like, they're stupid, they suck, they're smelly, I hate them. Like, they start freaking out. It's like, guys, these are human beings. Okay, I get that you didn't like the game. They're still human beings. Okay, they're still people like you and me, and they still deserve, you know, some level of respect and dignity, right? We can joke and meme and everything, and my typical policy is that if I'm going to say anything, that you know, I want to be comfortable saying it to their face too. And as far as I can think, I mean, I've always tried to hold to that, where like if I see Todd or Emil, I'll tell them exactly what I've said on stream, you know. And I think that that's important, because I think a lot of people can slip into it. Can we say that about Jim Ryan? Oh, it would be very funny if I ever met Jim Ryan, because I'd be like, Jim, why do you come off like an alien wearing a human mask? Why did you take that photo with everybody smiling at PlayStation London Studios and then fire every single one of them less than a week later?
Right?
That seemed kind of messed up. What was that about? We could have lots of fun.
Hello?
Yeah. Why are you the way that you are? That's why they won't let me talk to Jim. No, he's retired now, so I can't.
A lot of the conversation that we haven't really touched on here, they
He has nothing to do with the business
loved
anymore.
working here. which was probably a really exciting time for a new studio being established, but they were very flattering with just how great it was to work at Firewalk and the general environment. Apparently they weren't really crunching too. I mean, there was certainly a level of putting more time into the game, but it sounds like they were all choosing to do a little bit of overtime, just in the sense that they were really enjoying the creative process, and people were heard and seen in the environment. So it's great. It does sound like, at least for these 11 folks, they genuinely really loved working at Firewalk. Now, as far as PlayStation, they didn't really get to say a whole lot here, and that's probably the biggest sort of...
I mean, to a certain extent, I can imagine why they would love working on it. They got to work on this thing for years and years and years and years. And what I've always just been baffled by is how these live service games can take so long. Like, they take so long, and then you end up with something and you're like, so you have 4 maps that are all like pretty small? Like, what have you been doing? And I don't think I'm the only one that kind of feels that way sometimes, where I'm like, what are you guys doing all day?
What would you say
I don't
do
know,
here?
I don't get it. I don't get where all of your time is going.
thing they want to have guardrails on, but we do have some quotes here. So one of them is, quote, "The internet will and has said many things about how the game failed, and it was bad, and it was like many bad things about it. But the thing that I think that's missed on a lot of the public perception of that is that if the team is capable of making things as directed, that's valuable. You can absolutely argue about the direction, 100%, I'll be right there with you. It would have been excellent for our parent company to try and work with us a little bit more. It's so expensive and almost impossible to even get 100 people to get together and make something. It's so hard. We could have supported other studios. We could have ramped on to a different project, helped them finish it, and jump. Because we're all in the same business of trying to make money for a big daddy company. And so, like, we should be able to, like, actually work together, and none of that happened." So again, the big takeaway is they really love the job. They didn't want to go anywhere, even so much to the point where when they got into the conversation of how they found out about the studio closure, and these things tend to happen with very big companies. It's very abrupt. So on the ground, folks usually don't hear about it until day of, and it's almost like it's very immediate, basically. So one anecdote that was shared initially in the podcast is that somebody went to go do laundry. They missed the meeting, and like 9 minutes later, their Slack channels were cut off. Everything was cut off. Somebody went off and made a Discord so that everyone could actually rejoin and say goodbye to each other, and also be a support channel to one another by, answering questions on how do I file unemployment, how do I file for Cobra, things like that, which is always a really messy thing. Doesn't have to be, specific to Firewalk. That's always usually how that stuff goes, and it's quite ugly. But they didn't really get to address, and they probably didn't want to address certain things like the game price, the character designs, directly addressing online narratives. I think they're just trying to say what they feel comfortable saying in the moment. And there's definitely a certain, levity to the conversation, in that they really enjoyed what they were working on. They like the environment, and they stand by it. A lot of them do in this podcast, but it's very fascinating. There's obviously like a level to it of some accountability, but not really. And like, that's the issue, is that they're not directly talking about things like character designs. The one quote about how the game was perceived as uncool is probably the best that they were willing to sort of admit in the here and now. But like, that's true. That's the worst part about it, is that there's really not a whole lot you can do when you make something, and just straight up a large portion of the gaming audience looks at that and goes, "Nah, son, that is not for me." There is no denying that, like, in the grand scheme of things, the vast majority of people did not play the game, and those are numbers we just have flat out. Most people did not play the game, but that's the other hard part about the conversation surrounding Firewalk and Concord, is that it still was a game in a very, very deeply saturated market. I mean, I always find, well, at least I wonder how the game would have done like 15 something years earlier, right? Like, if this
15 years earlier, yeah, it would have popped off, because that would have been Overwatch. But I mean, unfortunately, they just never had that opportunity. I think the good video by Mystic putting all of this together. I appreciate it. Much appreciated, Mr. Mystic. And I think that overall, none of the developers said anything like that crazy. I think all of them put out things that made perfect sense. They were saying stuff like, you can hate the direction. We agree with you. You know, that they disagreed on some of the stuff. They went in, started working on the game, and were shocked that they didn't have a clearer understanding of what was going to differentiate this game from others, and that wasn't something that they even really tackled until much later. And so a lot of the developers were even echoing some of the frustrations and complaints that the audience had, and other stuff. Like the one employee brought up the idea where the audience is going, how do they not realize how bad this is, or how much we don't like it? And they're like, we do. It's just not our place. Like we can't do anything about it, you know. And I think that is very much the case, is that
there's always so much the people below, like the non-higher ups, can do, because the people who are working just on the game itself are there because of the higher ups. They're the people in the higher ups, they're the boss. So they tell you what to do. They're paying you money. It's like, it's basically when they're making an idea, it's basically their idea. It's like, yeah, you can have some say. It's like, because yeah, it would be cool if we did this or that. You can do that. You can kind of, you know, kind of sway the idea, you know, in a different direction. But at the end of the day, it's you're technically just doing a job. So it's like, if the game is shit, it's not 100% the people working on its fault. It's more of the people above. It's technically their idea. It's just they have the idea, but they're too busy running the business, or they just don't know how to do the things they need to do. So that's why the company is hiring you to do the job, you know. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not so much that. That's why you never really want to get on the devs for creating a shitty game. It's more so the higher ups. But yeah.
And for a lot of the developers, they applied for the job, they started working on it, and they put out the best thing that they could. And frankly, in a lot of ways, I think Concord, on a technical level, was really well optimized. It ran really well. It was really tight. The network code was really good. It was a very well executed game. It was just a game that nobody really wanted. And we can bring up the other stuff like the character designs and some of the cosmetics. I still insist some of the DLC cosmetics for Suicide Squad are worse than anything Concord had to offer. I mean,
I think they're just bad.
Dude, I'm even clipped in some of these. They took it from my video looking at it. I'm looking for one in particular. Yeah, this one, the garbage bag. I get that some of these are inspired by comic books, but at some point you gotta step in and say no.
Yeah.
At some point you gotta go, fam, what are we doing? What are we doing? Can we not? Like, shocker, people didn't find this cool. I'm stunned. So I will say Concord had better cosmetics and skins than that, which is not saying a lot. But I think it's just, you know, one of those games that failed because it was fundamentally one that nobody really asked for, which is a big problem. That's a big hurdle to get over. And two, I think it was representative of all of the frustrations that were landing at Sony's feet at that particular time. So it was just kind of a perfect storm of crap that made all of this land the way that it did. Total Malarkey, thank you for the 20, very generous. I don't get why devs think no one can see their game and rely on hearsay. With streamers, Steam community, etc., I can see gameplay and game systems before I buy. People can see your game for what it is. Don't hide behind review. I do think that to a large extent you're right. Like when they're describing, people thought our game was uncool, so nobody wanted to try it themselves. That is something that I just don't find particularly compelling, where it's like, yeah, I looked at reviews of this game like Duskborn and I chose I don't like it, so I'm not going to buy it. Like, well, you didn't even play it. Yes, I did not, because I saw it and I didn't want to, and I didn't like what I saw, so I didn't buy it. That's
right. You have every right to do that. Like, that's, I do that all the time. Like, I there's plenty of games that come out and I look at the trailer, I'm like, that's sus, or I just, it doesn't look good, or yeah, that looks good, but it doesn't interest me. That's the whole point of a trailer. That's the whole point of like looking at like looking at even reviews and stuff too. If you think it doesn't look good and you're like, you know what, I'm gonna wait, because you know what, in order for me to get that game, I have to spend my hard-earned money. If I don't like the thing, it's just like, so am I not supposed to say that like burgers don't taste good because I don't want to spend my money on burgers, like, or a mac and cheese, like food? Like specific foods, it's the same concept. It's like in order for me to play the game, I have to spend my hard-earned money. And yeah, probably, yeah, probably there is a difference between playing the game and looking at the game and saying that's not good. I've done that plenty of times of movies and games and all kinds of different entertainment things. You know, it's like at first I was like, oh, I don't like. It's the same thing with like food too. It's just like when I was, you know, I would look at food, I'm like, oh, I don't look good, but then I tried, I'm like, oh, that is pretty good. It's just at first I just like, no, it doesn't interest me, I don't care, and I move on, you know. And it's like maybe down the road when it's like, you know, $5, $10, yeah, sure, you know what, if it is definitely something that I don't want, then I only wasted a couple dollars. I feel like I only wasted a couple dollars. Whereas if I buy it right on launch and I spend $70 and I don't like it, I just wasted $70. I'll take the $10 over the $70.
That's why reviews are a thing. Like, yeah,
yes.
but you didn't even try. You didn't even play it yourself.
I hate that.
You didn't even give it a chance. It's like I did. And I think that's where, you know, I'd probably slip and disagree with that.
That's what demos are for, too.
Like, even the beta, they didn't want to try it during the beta to see if it played well or was fun. But I don't think it really would have changed anything, frankly. Also, I think the first, somebody will have to remind me, it's blurry, was the first week of the Concord beta, or maybe it wasn't even 2 weeks. I might be thinking of the marathon thing. I think the beta was like paid. You had to buy the game to get access to it. I don't think it was a full open beta. I don't think so, but I could be wrong about that. Clearly, I blocked it out of my memory. Locked it deep down. He took my thing.
Good video from Luke Stevens. Go ahead and check him out. I'll go ahead and post video if I do decide to put this up on YouTube, which will have to be a extreme highlight because I wasn't recording that. But yeah. Go ahead and post that to the chats. And yeah, so I guess in the case where I do upload the video, definitely go ahead and check that out. I'll have the link down below in the comments. And also oops. Did I record this? And also while you're down there, go ahead and like, subscribe, all the fun stuff down there. Get the link for Dubby link. Alright, I'll catch you later. Alright, yeah, so go ahead and post that to the chats. Where's my chat? Alright, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and call it a night. Call it here. It's getting a little late. I'm in a little early. I think. Yeah, it's a little early. Yeah, it's almost 3 hours. So it's about 3 hours. I'm going off of 2 different streams here because my computer crashed on me. Ugh. That's why I'm getting confused because I'm looking at the wrong thing. All right, well, I want to thank everyone so much for hanging out, for chilling. Kind of a quiet night on both sides, but we did have 2 people come in, say hi, and hang out a little bit. Let me look at this chat. This will tell me. So I want to thank Deku Ichigo and Disturbed. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out in the chat there. If you're just looking at things for the lurk, think any raids, no new subs, follows, anything like that. So as for me, so it looks like it's gonna take me take me a bit to get this done. So I'm gonna focus on getting this done so I can get it out. Wait, hold on, yeah, so I can get it out next week, so I can get like the. Well, hold on. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna get this done so I can get it out not next week, but the week after for my Patreon. So again, if you're not following me on Patreon or Ko-fi or anything like that, not a Patreon member or anything like that, supporter, I guess is the best thing to say. Go ahead and get the links for that. 1 second. There's that, and for Ko-fi and for Patreon. Where'd my Patreon link go? Shit, I don't have... Well, there's the Ko-fi one. Apparently I don't have a command for my... Oh, I thought I did. I'll just post my socials, so if you want to follow me on my socials, there's that. Probably add that to my thing too. Okay. 1 second. Get this over to YouTube. There's social media links. Again, you can use that to get over to, Ko-fi and all that stuff. So, to Patreon. So, so I was thinking about maybe streaming on Tuesday, doing like a 3rd stream. However, because I need to focus on trying to get this done, and then before I can get that done the week afterwards, I'm just going to hold off on doing the extra stream. I don't want to go too much into that, but always be in the Discord, which I'll post the Discord here. You always, if I do go live do the extra, not on here, it's on here, it's not on YouTube anywhere, it's on another platform. If I do go live on a Tuesday, not on these platforms, being in the Discord really helps. You'll get notification in the Discord and a link and everything. Post that as well. So definitely join the Discord. Good way to keep in contact with the community and whatnot. With that, I want to thank Dubby for sponsoring the stream as always. Thank you everyone so much. I will be back next Tuesday. I think we're gonna get into... Oh, of course, an ad break starts. God damn it, on Twitch. Or I think we're gonna get into a game. We're gonna play a game next week. I think that's what we're gonna be doing. How about we just play Hollow Knight? Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I'll figure it out. But we're definitely not going to be doing. Actually, well, next week will be October, so I might just actually play like a horror game or something. Again, thank you so much. I will see you in the next one. Actually, oh yeah, I took it up. I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream on YouTube. I'm gonna find someone to